Welcome in, everybody. It's great to have you back for another episode of High Hopes Podcast. We are very blessed tonight to have a great guest, Missy Daniel, who is a LPC, Reset CCC, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. She is, I'm going to be very vulnerable and transparent right now. She has helped me tremendously. With some early childhood stuff and even just some stuff that, because of the early childhood stuff, hadn't been dealt with. And she is amazing, and she's the best I know out there. And so I consider this to be a fantastic privilege and blessing for her to be in with us. And Missy, I really do think the world of you. You know that.
Thank you. And you didn't have to say that, and you kind of threw that on me there. So I'm very humbled, and it's an honor, and I feel like my cup overfloweth, and so I'm very blessed to be here as well.
Well, thank you. And we know this is not going to be the last one. There are going to be hopefully many more episodes with you and addressing a topic that's obviously very close and dear to your heart, and something even I, over the last year, have come to really dive into, and that's something that High Hope is really looking at, and that's mental health. It's so important, and I think it's, you could probably tell me better, but over the last 10 years, how do you think it's escalated? What do you think over the last 10, 15 years? Has it really escalated, or would you say even the last 5 years?
The mental health field?
The mental health field and awareness and just everything.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I don't know exactly when, but it was recent that insurance started allowing people to have mental health paid for by insurance. So that's different. I think it was about 10 years ago, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, I think now people are realizing that it's an issue. Mm-hmm. And people are talking about it more, and I think we're starting to change some of those old patterns and generational issues that we've had before, and we're working on ourselves now, and we're in turn treating other people better and feeling better in general. So that's the goal, right?
Right, absolutely. And as a church. Because when I was growing up, there weren't the resources or the awareness, or even just being able to, some of the trauma I went through, it was just said, hey, let's pray about it, which is great. We believe in prayer, obviously, not knocking that, and not knocking anybody, but as a church, and I just think all Christians in general, how do you think that we have really progressed in mental health awareness and then also treating it?
I'm glad you brought that up. That is not something I was familiar with growing up. I didn't really grow up in the Pentecostal or Apostolic church like you did. I was raised Catholic. And so, but just in general, mental health was seen as taboo, and if you said you wanted a counselor, then people thought you were crazy. My parents didn't believe in counseling, and they didn't believe in emotions at all. But that's something that I heard recently, is that people who did grow up in the church were just told, pray about it, God will heal you. And I'm just glad that my church, is educated on mental health, and that's not my pastor's approach. My pastor's approach is, hey, we'll pray about it, but let me connect you to somebody who can help you. And if medication is involved, then I encourage you to look into that too. But that's not always the answer. I try to do things in more of a holistic approach. I don't like to be that counselor that goes straight to medication. I want to look at, let's see if we can get you well holistically. Let's try to get you closer to God. Let's try to get you whole and forgiving yourself, forgiving others. And sometimes that fixes itself. But there are times that, after seeing clients for a little while, then I might say, I encourage you to go talk to a doctor. you know?
Mhm.
And I'm not one that can say, you need to be on this medication. That's not my call. That's not my role as a licensed mental health therapist. But I do have certain doctors, based on their ages and what they're going through, that I refer people to.
So, as I was saying, High Hope's goal is to help people with addiction, and not just addiction, but also eh, dealing with any kind of trauma that they may have gone through, whatever that might be. And that's, anxiety, depression, divorce, church hurt, any trauma that's real to them.
Hmm.
Um,
I like how you said that, because I've heard people say that's not really a trauma, but that's not fair to judge someone else's trauma
yeah.
or even judge your own trauma. I've had clients say, when I ask them the question, tell me about some traumatic experiences you've had, and they'll say, well, this happened, but that's not really trauma. Well, you thought of it, so it must have been a big deal. So I like that you said that. We say in counseling, there's little T's and big T's. So those little traumas count too.
That's a great point to bring up. But what role do you think that um, addiction plays in or how does it correlate? Addiction and mental health, how does that correlate?
Okay. Well, this is the first thing I thought of when you asked that. Let's say a person is going through some childhood trauma, okay, and as a teenager, they begin to cope with ways that they feel are right to fit in. That might mean smoking, doing drugs, alcohol, or whatever. And when that happens, what we learn is that their brain is not fully developed. So that creates some sort of brain damage. Okay, it creates these pathways in their brains that are not the normal pathways of an individual, right? So we can say there's some sort of brain damage which can create the beginning of addiction there. So if a person starts to cope with drugs at a young age, then it is more likely that as they get older, they will become addicted. And there's some adverse experiences going on, whether it be in the home, outside the home. And then they become adults, and it's just difficult for them in general to stop, once their body became physically dependent upon that. And that in itself can create some further mental health issues, poor relationships, poor marriages, and then along that path comes some grief and some shame and some guilt, feeling like a failure, and it's kind of like this snowball effect.
Snowball. Yeah. I think that's I recently read that's such an important point, because I just recently read where that our brains were not built to suppress trauma. Undealt trauma, if we keep suppressing it, what we do is just like you just talked about, move to something to numb it later in life, or even if you experience that trauma as a child, when you're a teenager, you may turn to numb it with substances, or other outlets that aren't healthy. And that undealt trauma, what it does is it's suppressed and it never leaves the brain. And the brain only has so much capacity to store things.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, and I found this really interesting, is if it's undealt with, then later in life, it leads to, it manifests in disease and sickness within your body. And I mean, I'm talking up in the 60s and 70s age. If you're able to live that long and you haven't, unfortunately had a heart attack or something like that before, but undealt with trauma, early childhood trauma, if undealt with or gotten the proper, counseling or whatever the treatment might be, manifests itself later in life. And I found that really to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned last year, I think it was, about a trauma technique where you're using eye movement desensitization. And what that does is it sort of like balances the brain, right? Because you're stimulating both the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere at the same time, interchangeably. And what that does is it recalls a trapped traumatic memory that wasn't processed in the right place. And so that trapped memory, because it wasn't processed right, causes all those kind of problems like what you're talking about. It leads to some forgetfulness, which can lead to some shame, which can lead to some other things such as, poor relationships, high anxiety, and then those things just keep piling up. And so when we do that particular trauma technique, we are first going to release a lot of strong emotions in that client because that memory is full of emotions, and that's just sitting there. And so, whenever we do this, we have to make sure that the client can self-regulate first. So this isn't just a one-time, 5-second thing. It can take several sessions to teach the client those coping skills, how to self-regulate and how to think and process on a deep level. And so the therapist's role then is to, make the client feel safe and then support the client when they are having that strong reaction to that memory. But then once that comes, it's a very quick process after that. So it's usually there's the traumatic memory, there's a lot of emotion attached to it. You keep going with the desensitization, and then it quickly leads to it's processed in the right place, so therefore the feelings are now healing, compassion, understanding, clarity. So for example, a client might recall a traumatic memory about their mom, okay? And this caused years and years of anger towards their mom from not healing from that trauma, right? But in this therapy technique, they recall this memory, they cry about it, deal with it, and then it's an automatic, almost like compassion. Oh, they did that because they were going through their own stuff, or they did the best that they could, or, and then you start to hear those kind of things. You might even hear things like, I'm like, where are your thoughts now? And, but they're usually positive. They have the experience, and then the thoughts are usually, wow, my mom did the best she could, or God was with me in that. And they can see, even in that traumatic experience, how God was working in their life, whereas before they couldn't.
And I think the important thing about that, Missy, is that the connection with a therapist is, it's such a big role that you play, because they have to have somebody, because for them to feel compassion, they have to first feel compassion from you. And then whenever they feel that compassion from you, they feel safe to deal with those emotions.
Yeah.
And, emotions are directives. They are data from all of our past experience. They're, and let me say that again, they're data. They're not directives. Feelings come from our emotions. So I may have past experiences, and it triggers something triggers that inside of me, and I may feel this, but I don't have to respond to that emotion. And my response is actually what my mood, how I feel. It's kind of, we now say, instead of saying I'm mad or I'm angry or I'm sad, we say I'm feeling. That's kind of what we do now, because I'm not sad. Now, something may trigger me, and how I respond to that may trigger, I can choose to either, okay, notice what happened, why I'm feeling this way, and what past experience triggered that.
Okay, so you paid attention in therapy.
Yes, thank you. And
That's so good. Yeah, that's what I tell my clients.
yes, thanks to Missy Daniel. Yes.
Oh, no. I'm glad you remembered that, though, and that is so important. A lot of times we resort to anger because it's this more powerful emotion that makes us feel safer, right? I feel strong. I like the way anger makes me feel. I feel strength. I feel power. But when we get to that true emotion, that's the hard part. And so when we're feeling upset, we have to ask ourselves, how am I really feeling? Because there's something under the surface of that anger. And yeah, you absolutely have to deal with it, feel it, embrace it, and then communicate it if it's appropriate. Now, sometimes you might not have to communicate that. That was between you and God, and you dealt with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there are times you have to go communicate to that person who hurt you or triggered you and say, hey, I'm feeling blank about what you just said or did. So, yeah, that's right.
And what if they don't respond in an appropriate?
Oh, that is such a good question. A person who loves you will respond in the appropriate way that validates you. Now, let's be honest, we can't love perfectly. Only Jesus does that, right? But if that person is someone you love and they're worth it, then you have to tell them, I need you to validate me. This is how I feel. I don't need you to get defensive. I don't need you to justify it. I just need you to validate me. And let's hope that that causes harmony between you and that individual. But there are going to be times that it doesn't. And in those times that it doesn't, it's very important for you to set healthy boundaries and talk about it with a therapist, talk about it with a loved one, talk about it with God. But overall, we want to try to still not have unforgiveness towards that person. We want to reach that level of self-actualization that when someone offends us, we immediately have compassion on them and try to avoid allowing ourselves to be hurt. We know that it's inevitable we're going to be hurt, but then we have to forgive as quickly as possible. And forgiveness is a daily choice. It's not a one-time thing. I've heard clients say, but I forgave him a long time ago. But do you daily forgive that person? That's really what it's about.
That's very good information because it's very hard a lot of times to respond, especially when we truly mean we're sorry. And somebody doesn't respond. And I'm actually just thinking of an incident. Actually, our daughter, our little boy at school, and she truly apologized and didn't get the appropriate response. So, what you just said is kind of what we had directed her, and it was really helpful, I think. But,
Awesome.
yeah, and that's another thanks to Missy Daniel.
No, you need to edit that part out.
But I want to go back because, High Hope, our overall mission, as we talked about, is to kind of help direct people and help them not only while they're in their trauma, which is not really our expertise. That's why we're trying to build a community with counselors and practitioners and people who actually are able to help deal with people with trauma from the past, and then we take it from there and kind of help them move from that point once they're healthy or feel like they're stabilized and move to the future. So I guess what my question to you is what are your thoughts on, because the kind of the way that we look to operate. I read a book called Intentional Change Theory, and it talked about, and this may be something for anybody, because we were brought up, in an era. There's something called coaching with compassion, and coaching for compliance. You could insert counseling there, coaching for compliance, coaching for compassion. And basically, it's saying that if you tell people they have to do this, they're like 20% chance of sustaining that algorithm. But if you help them and you coach with compassion and you're empathetic with them, it's like 70-something% that they'll sustain their sobriety, they'll sustain their mental health, lessen their anxiety, depression. I guess kind of what are your thoughts around that theory, or have you even heard of that?
I've heard motivational change theory. I haven't heard of that one before, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, think about it. We all want to listen to someone who cares about us, right? People don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true is, people, we're adults, right? When you become an adult, you've lived those childhood days. I think all of us to some degree get to this point where we're like, well, I'm not going to listen to anybody, right? I'm going to do what I want to do. Even as we mature, we still decide who we're going to listen to. And those people that we choose to listen to are those people that we know they have good intentions for us. So that makes sense. When we're providing empathy and we're being gentle and we're showing love to people, they're more likely to trust us enough to let us guide them through that addiction.
What in your counseling world, how do y'all define empathy?
Empathy is it's an action. It's showing that person that you care. It's being invested in their world. It's giving them your undivided attention and time, and you're using the body language to show them that they're safe. They're safe to be vulnerable, emotional. Everything that they're fixing to say is going in this space that's protected by this genuine concern and care. And then when you're communicating that to your partner, it's important that you're using your I statements and not blaming. And so there is this sort of, I don't know if you would call it a bubble or this circular environment of I'm being gentle and safe and vulnerable. And so therefore I need you to provide me with the right kind of validation, and just understanding that in that moment, you both have to put your shield and your sword down. There can't be any defensiveness. And in turn, when you're showing that kind of love to your partner or your loved one, you're doing that to yourself too. So if you're edifying them, you're edifying yourself, especially in a spousal relationship, right? Because you're one, spiritually, physically, intimately, emotionally.
All those things, yeah. And I think that applies on any relationship. That's good advice for even not just couples but you could apply that to friendships and children and in any area. And I know we're kind of conquering, and this is why I want to have you back as many times as we can, and we can pick a topic each time and kind of focus on that. But I feel like there are so many areas for us in the mental health space that are so important. I want to just get them all tonight. But when it comes to mental health and addiction, do you find that people have, what are some misconceptions, or why do you think that they're hesitant to seek out help?
So particularly for addiction, because that's what your ministry revolves around, I would provide education on how it impacts their family. So whether that be their spouse, kids, even parents, grandparents, siblings, cousin, because the whole family is affected by addiction.
Sure.
And so if they are reaching out and asking for some advice, I would encourage them to educate themselves on the family impact, because that's number one. I mean, awareness is really the first step, becoming aware and acknowledging that, oh, I'm doing this to my family. It's not just about me. It's about how it's affecting everybody. So I think that's the first advice that I would give. And I would definitely encourage them to seek professional help. So whether they'd see a mental health therapist, a doctor, psychiatrist, and provide them with the resources in the community that we have, the local resources that we have. But also, I would encourage them to take small steps. And that's one thing we need to look at it with addiction is, a lot of times people give up. They're on this journey and they use, and then they think, oh, I failed, and that's it. So a good piece of advice would be understand that you are human and that you are going to mess up. And when you do, you need to get right back on track and not feel like you're having to start back from the very beginning. And I think that's one of the misconceptions people have is when they have loved ones who are addicts or alcoholics and they, let's say they could go 3 years without drinking, and then they drink and the family's like, oh, that's it. They weren't they weren't recovered, they weren't healed, and they're never going to recover because we're back in this cycle, you know. And so I think we just need to encourage the addict to um, take it step by step, and the family member to acknowledge and reward every small step that's achieved.
That's such good advice because the um the as far as taking small steps and the shame and the guilt, I think is a lot of the times what keeps them from going to get help and being vulnerable, because they found that people who are the happiest, most joyful, and the most transparent with people believe that they are worthy, they're loved, and they're valued. They have a strong belief of that. The people who can't be, and the people who are hiding things and isolating, are the ones that they don't have value and they're not worthy of love. And so I think what you just pointed out and what you just brought out, if the families really were to provide a true Christ-like love and see them, yes, they may fall tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
They may stumble, but you know what? He still loves them more than I do as a parent. They're still in his hands, and so therefore, that's such an important and a powerful point you just brought out, because we need to reflect that love and see them as Christ sees them, so that they do feel safe and have our confidence and our trust to come to us as family and say, "I'm struggling here. Can you help me?"
Yeah.
It might put counselors out of business, but hey.
Yeah, that's so true. And you know, a lot of the family may have had their own addiction issues too and recovered. You know, and for some people it's easier than others, and that's one of those misconceptions, is that a family member might say, "Well, I quit, so you should be able to quit." And that's when we're looking at it through the wrong lens, as a moral decision rather than a brain disease.
That's a good point. And the fact that it's found that the more love we provide, the releases, you're very familiar, oxytocin,
Yes.
which helps us make better. It's called the moral molecule. I mean, and the cuddle hormone. So, I mean, just going and giving your child a hug, just something small like that, even if they've made the biggest mistake or the biggest whatever, it just releases. And God designed us so beautifully for all these things. Or it's amazing, but to release oxytocin that just
Yeah.
helps them make better decisions.
I love that you said that, because I am often telling my parents to do that with their kids when their kid's in a bad mood. And that's hard to do as parents when, you know, my 15-year-old slammed her door not long ago, and my initial response physically was this burning anger that started to rise. And I had to take a deep breath and remind myself that there's some reason that she's feeling that angry. And I need to have compassion on that rather than bite back and say, "You're not going to slam this door in this house." And, you know, so my response, which was not easy, again, I had to find my calm, ask myself, how am I feeling? Okay, get through that. And then I went in there and I gave her a big hug. And she released that anger and started crying, and then told me about something that happened at school that day.
Oh, wow.
So it's amazing. You're right. That hug, that love, that empathy when someone is struggling can make a big difference.
It does. And it reminds me of a story that many have heard, that when I came home, and I was so broken, Missy, and messed up. This was 2015. I just come out of a terrible time and still fighting a lot of things. And my parents were actually leaving to go. It was the first Hope conference they ever did, and they're about to do the 10th anniversary of that, which is really cool. But
Looking forward to that.
yes, it's gonna be great. And if any of you have not made plans, go to Eventbrite or Hope Prodigal Ministries now and get your tickets. It's gonna be fantastic.
I'll be there.
Yes, but they were about to walk out the door, and here I'm broken in every area of my life. I'm not talking about just financially, but I'm talking about just mentally and just beat down because of life and choices I've made and all that. And they're leaving, and then so they walked out the door, and I just started. Look, the devil used me. The enemy used me to really go after them. I started going after them on things that I thought weren't important. You didn't have to do that. You don't have to do this, that. Just stuff was. My mind was so messed up, and they didn't respond or anything like that. They left, went and did the conference, and when they left, I went to my bedroom and punched the door, and there's still a hole in that door. There's still a hole, and I bring it places and speak about that. But I went and bought them a new door, and they didn't want to put it up. They kept that up as a memorial, but they came home and loved on me after that because they knew where I was, and they knew how broken I was. But I thought it was the most beautiful example of they still saw me not as the broken person I was, or the 40-year-old that hit a door, but as Jesus saw me.
Well, I have to say, Dustin, I'm going to get a little bit personal here. That's hard to do. And, in my first marriage, there was a lot of addiction. And I am not proud of the way that I behaved in that marriage. I'm not proud of my own responses physically, emotionally. And I know that y'all have a wonderful program at POA for people who may be struggling with that right now, a thing called codependency, right? Where you think, I can fix that person. If I go through their phone or I go through their things and I throw it away and I call their drug contacts and I'm mean to them, I tell them never to come back over here. I think I have some sort of power over it and I'm going to control it. And all that does is make you a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just love that was your parents' response to that, getting past their own thoughts and fears and insecurities about it, and they loved you anyway. And I can only imagine as a loved one, there had to be that thought of, well, am I going to be rewarding the behavior if that's what I do? And they looked past that and they said, we love this person. So we're going to show them the love of Jesus no matter what. And I hope that if I'm put in that situation again, I can handle it differently. So I don't want to sit up here and act like I'm perfect and that I've always known the right way to respond. I haven't. I've done a lot of things that I regret. But moving forward, I think that's one of the things God is speaking to me about. I was at POA this past Wednesday, and one of the things he said is God can use your fears. It was the Spanish guy that y'all have.
Pastor Gama.
Okay.
Yes.
He said God can use your fears. And I was already praying, God, you know my biases toward addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I'm supposed to be praying on how I'm going to be a part of High Hope Ministries. And God said, yeah, Missy, you're going to be a part of it. And I don't know what that is yet. But as I was praying, that was the thing that stood out as he said, God can use your fears. And that touched me. That touched me because that is the one thing I have always said I'm not going to be an addiction counselor because I'm biased. I've had my own personal experience and I don't want to help those kind of people. But guess what? I've had people with addiction and not a lot. It's been God's like, I'll give you one here and let you navigate that one, and maybe a few months later another one here. And the beautiful thing about it is it gives me time to get to know and love each one. And that is the part of the process is let me love this individual. And that love can bring on that empathy and that support and what they need as a mental health therapist moving forward. And I'm just grateful that God has me here. I'm very moved. I'm holding back the tears right now. But I know that this ministry is going to be great. I feel it in my spirit. I knew it when you presented it to me. And there's already some evidence that it's going in a God direction. And so I am looking forward to how God is going to use me in this ministry. It may
We
be
are too.
small, it may be big, it
Yeah.
may start off small. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be some part. And so I just honor your parents for choosing to show you love in that moment where they probably could have done a lot different and a lot more harm.
You're exactly right, and I have to, and I don't know that there's a podcast or even the time I speak that I don't honor them, but I can't honor them enough because, and they'll tell you, look, hey, we made, and what parent doesn't, and what person, even in your situation, doesn't make mistakes because, like you said earlier, we're human. So give yourself the grace of being human in flesh. We're not God. We're not Jesus. Um, but we learn from those, and but my parents, for the most part, did an amazing job, and I wouldn't be sitting here. High Hope wouldn't be anything without my parents. And but to go back to your point, and I'm gonna have you maybe if you have some final thoughts before I end it up. But I just do want to say before you do, you know, we we have prayed, and God is doing some exciting things, some things that we can't wait. You know, Gavin and I were talking even earlier. We have to pace ourselves and take it little because there's such great things in the pipeline. Even this week when I was speaking in New Orleans, some things that opened up. But we have to take it one step at a time, and we know too that you're going to be a part. Just being biased and for selfish reasons, like I told you, I know God will speak to you, so I'm not trying to push you. I'm just saying personally, Dustin in the flesh hopes it's a big part because I know what you've done, and look, I'm being very transparent. I feel like that's what people need now is transparency to help them. And I'm going to be sitting down here soon with my uncle being very transparent why I left and walked away from God. So that's anything that I can do or that we can do to help in any avenue that I hope can go is what we're going to do. And we're just going to go. But we hope you have a big role, but whatever it is, we want God to lead you. Seriously, we want God to lead you. We know He will. But we're going to have you back, obviously, and like I said, we will talk. My desire would be at least once a quarter to take a topic on mental health and discuss that, because High Hope is not totally substance abuse. Yes, that's a big deal, and that's a lot of our focus, but we also, any kind of trauma, which you're an expert in. So whatever that may be, that's maybe causing a disconnect between the person and God.
Okay.
And so whatever that is that's causing a disconnect, there are people sitting on church pews that are going through, we know this, that are going through stuff. And so if there's just a place, a private, safe place that they can come to, that's what we want to provide. But any final thoughts before we wrap this up that you want to say concerning mental health or addiction or
I think we've covered a pretty good bit about what I thought was important for today. I do want to say that I appreciate the honor, and however, I do not want to boast or brag about anything that I have done and give all that back to God, because it is truly God who has led me to where I am today. And I have a heart for people, and I have a great heart for this ministry that you're doing. And I'm a passionate person. Mm-hmm. So when I invest in something, I go all out. And so that's why I'm like, God, it can be small, but I don't know what it is. And I do believe that God is going to reveal that at the right time. And I remember whenever I was taking the GRE to get into master's school, I have to give God this honor publicly right now because this is really significant in my journey. I had scheduled that GRE after working all day at 5:30 in the evening.
What were you
Poor
thinking?
decision.
What
Oh
were
my
you?
gosh. And I was so stressed or just sick from there was obviously some kind of sickness that I had. I started running fever when I got to the center
Oh my
to take my assessment. This was before COVID, so nobody was all freaked out. But I also forgot my license. So I had to go all the way home, which was 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. So that cut my test in half. So that left me from a 3-hour test to an hour and a half. I was running fever. I had to cover with a blanket. I was the only one in that room. They got me a blanket. They got me some coffee, and I prayed. I said, "Okay, Lord, if you really want me to be a counselor, you're going to have to answer these questions for me." And silly me had also signed up for essay portion. So it wasn't just a multiple choice. There was a full essay portion as well. So I was like, okay, well, I probably didn't pass, and it's going to be all right. So I walked out of there thinking, it's going to be okay. I'll study and I'll take it again, you know. And 6 months later, my coworker said, "Missy, how bad did you do on the GRE? Let me help you study for what you need to work on." And I was like, "No, I don't want to look at it. It's probably so bad." And she said, "Just give me your password. I won't tell you how bad it is. I just need to see what you need to study." So I gave her my password. She's in an office, you know, down the hall. And she said, "Missy, you passed."
Wow.
Stop it. How bad is it? For real. She said, "No, Missy, you passed." There's no way. There's no way I passed
Look at
that
God.
GRE on the first try,
Oh yeah.
except by God. And so I just thank God that He's led me down this road and He's led me to where I am today. I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here. And again, I just thank you so much for having me.
And we thank you for being here. And look, I would have taken all those signs as turn around, go home and schedule it again, God. But no, he was obviously with you. And we also, I know that God intersected our paths. It wasn't just to help me through a time, but it was also, I believe it was for a mission. And so God knows what He's doing.
Definitely.
He has led such great people, and I'm so thankful. And I encourage any of you, Missy's information is on our website at highhopeministries.com. I encourage any of you that are local, or Missy, are you doing telehealth yet? Or
Yes.
Okay, you're telehealth. So any of y'all who want to try to get in touch with her, she is fantastic, and we
Thank you.
are so appreciative of her being here, excited about what God's going to do through her, in her, with us, and we hope all of you enjoy this episode. Please share it, send it to somebody that you know it'll help. And we can't wait to see you on the next episode.